Good morning, United Kingdom, and good morning to another session of Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, and the drive time live session with him. And good morning. Today you are on with me at the same time, Lakhi Singh. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Normally you're flying in just about that now, and I'm starting the show, and then I'm giving you an introduction. But we have got someone special today. I think a young lady who's flown in all the way from sunny India. She's got a lot of experience in the Canadian property market. So we're going to be bringing her in later after we've started the conversation to get her opinion on things and see what it is she says about our topic. So without further ado, I'm going to give Lakhi Singh the topic, and that the topic is your buy-to-let property performing in 2021? What does that mean? We'll go into detail later on. But more importantly, as I usually do, I'm going to start with the saying of the weekend. So all weekend, think about this. You get up in the morning and think, well, you are the sunshine in your life. That's right. It's about the same. We've actually, I'll say it as it is. So you're the one who can fill the void with sunshine. With you as your sunshine in your life. So in your world. So Lakhi, what do you say to that? Are you a ray of sunshine in your world? Can you fill the void, the gap, the darkness with your sunshine?
I think that's the only way to be, is it not? To be the sunshine in your life. You got to love yourself first, and before anybody can love you.
Okay, so loving yourself is probably called selfishness in another way, in another world. But sunshine, okay, metaphorically, what does that mean?
So basically, having a sort of a positive mindset or a growth mindset is, and keeping that and retaining that is actually, I think, very important. And it's all too often too easy, especially by the end of the week, to be more in the dark clouds than it is to be in sunshine.
Wow, sounds like a deep hidden insight into Lakhi Singh's mentality when it comes to the weekend. Maybe quite dark and gloomy, I think. I mean, the way that topic appears to me is it's more about people who are basically a bit frivolous, a bit sort of carefree, a bit go happy, lucky, using your name there. And I think it's probably people who are just out there to make other people smile. And it's probably them, or in a way, it's trying to tell everybody how in their little world they can bring sunshine in to fill the void. And the void has to be something. We have to understand, what do we mean by a void? What is void? Is it a miss void? So somebody's not there on the weekend for you or in your life? Or is it that you have lost so much and yet you can't see the best of the situation because all you can see is what you've lost and not see what you have?
I think you've misunderstood, because coming up to the end of the weekend means that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you've been hammering away at work, and by Friday, your energies are a little bit depleted. So I'm saying keeping your sunshine alive on a Friday is just as important as keeping your sunshine alive on a Monday.
Excellent. Sounds better. With that very optimistic, very positive adjustment there by Lakhi Singh, I think I'll call in the guest, Kayona. Is that right? Kayona. I don't know if it's pronounced it right. We'll ask the lady herself. Good
Hello.
morning. Good morning, Kayona. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Cool.
It's Koyena.
Pardon?
It's Koyena. It's pronounced Koyena.
Koyana. Yes, right. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Koyana.
All right.
And what's the
Yeah.
surname, Koyana?
It's Pathak. Koyena Pathak.
Batuk. Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense. Batuk.
All right.
Okay,
Yes.
Koyana Batuk. And you've flown in specially for us, I think, from India. Is that right?
Yes.
That's great. That's nice to know. So it makes us feel important. And shows that we're international. Now, I know you've got a lot of experience, I think, dealing within the Canadian property market, the North American property. Is that right, Kayona?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. So we're going to relate a lot of stuff we're talking about today. We're going to take it over the ocean. We're going to ask Kayona her input and ask her what she has on the topic and whether it is correlative. Do we do the same, or are they doing the same as us, or are we doing the same as them? Which way around it is, we'll decide. So to continue, we've asked Lakhi, and he's given us his opinion. The topic we will leave aside. The saying for the weekend, which is what I like to start with. The saying for this weekend is how you can bring sunshine in your world to fill the void. That's really what it means. So sounds a bit of a uplifting type of a saying for people probably sitting in a dark space, maybe very depressed. What do you say to this saying? Is that do you find that is a truth? Are you a bit of sunshine in your world?
Definitely. I think that in the past year, especially all over the world with COVID and so much happening, there has been darkness and more darkness. Like it's become very more conspicuous. And I think that there's darkness and void everywhere. So being somebody's sunshine or having that ability to bring happiness into somebody else's life is very important. And the sun does shine, like it brings sunshine into everybody's life and still glows. So I think that once you definitely can be the sunshine in somebody else's life and still be happy in your own life. And with so much happening around in the world, I definitely think that we should try to make everybody else happy as well as as Lakhi mentioned.
It's that a balance. I'm gonna take your statement. I'm gonna dissect it a bit. Lakhi Singh, is it possible for you to be everybody's monkey and also keep bananas with yourself?
Yeah, I think it's possible to be a monkey and have bananas for yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I
can do it. I can do it. Yeah.
That answers that question. So I've got 2 against 1. So I'm not going to further indulge into that. I'm going to say I agree that I can be someone's monkey and also have bananas for myself. Okay, but I do agree with the general statement that Kayona made, and that is that we're still in a bit of a confused state around the world, and we are definitely in a bit of a disillusioned, I would say. I wouldn't say depressive. I'd say disillusioned or a broken state where we don't really know what's going to happen next. So some part of being in a void is really not knowing what's next. And if you're not aware of what's happening, happening next, and you don't know why everything around you is as it is, as we have in the present situation. We've got the lockdown. But why has a lockdown been so important? I mean, we've had Ebola, we've had AIDS, we've had avian bird flu.
Are you talking about yourself, Vijayan, or
What did you say?
are you talking about yourself, or?
What, the avian bird flu?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say, yeah, if I was the avian bird flu, you've had me already. So you didn't have to lock down before. So I think the first question, I'm going to put it to you, Lakhi Singh. Why did we have to have this enormous, gigantic world lockdown? 8 billion people on the planet, and around 5.5 billion, I think, of those people who are in the controlled areas, the affected areas, i.e., cities, main countries, that they were forced to lock down. So, why was it important to lock down? I know they're saying, well, it's contagious and it's, you can catch it. Well, you could catch bird flu, you could catch Ebola, you could catch AIDS. Why did they make this so vitally important? Do you know?
Well, I
Why did
don't
it need the
know.
lockdown of the entire? Pardon?
I don't know, but I do have an answer.
Go on, sir. Fire away.
So, if you watch all the movies that have been coming out in the last 5, 10, 15 years about the disasters, everything's already been decided in the movies. So whatever happens in the movies happens in real life. And a lot of people can't distinguish between real life and the movies now. So I think the movie's already been played out, and now it's just playing out in real life.
Okay. Do you believe with that statement, Kiona? Do you think it's a clever strategy by the forces to acclimatize us with what they're going to do, so that we were already listening and watching movies that were about a virus breakout, and all of a sudden the whole world is in lockdown, and everybody's dying, and there's a handful of people out there who are on the right side trying to fix the problem. And did they make that movie on purpose to acclimatize us? Are we being acclimatized to accept everything that they're doing in reality as real?
It's a
Fiona?
fair probability, and it's a very interesting point that Lucky made. But I definitely think that yes, because it is really uncanny that some people had already predicted that there's going to be a virus breakout, and that's going to be the next big, like there's not going to be a war. It's going to be a biological war, and some people claimed so strongly that COVID is indeed a planned out, strategized, biological war. So there are always fair chances. Yes. I strongly think that there have been so many conspiracy theories, and only a few
Wow.
major role players who have been able to work at this, help us with this, and the rest of the world was just shut down, shoved aside to a corner. So there are fair chances that things are panning out as the way they have been. Like these things have been laid out for us, and we are just like silent observers in this case.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Right. It's coming first from Kiona. So I'm going to say, that's a bit of a hot news there, that it could be. And it could be that most of these major events are being laid out. I'm just going to add something to that before we move on to the main topic of properties and buy-to-lets and investment and income. And that is a gentleman that I was in company with a few months ago actually told me that the topic of population cleansing was in his economic book. So he'd studied it in economics. It was a chapter. They covered it. They didn't go into too much detail on it, but it was actually written in there as it is an established fact that after so many years, it is only right and fair that population cleansing and war and these two things should happen to curb the masses, to refine and make sure it's only the strongest remain for the next immediate century. So that's a bit of fact there. It's in books. I'm not saying it's correct, and I'm not saying it's right, because everybody has the right of life, and until the time they are to be on the planet. But if somebody is creating a story, if somebody is running that story, and it does involve the loss of life, it's a sad statement and a sad situation to be in. So I think that's when we have lovely people like Kiona and smelly people like Lakhi to come into our lives and give us a bit of sunshine, to add a bit of flavor to us, to make us think about good, nice things in all of this desperation and difficulty. So I'm going to leave it with that. I'm going to go on to the topic. The first point of the topic, obviously, is that we're discussing the buy-to-let property market in the United Kingdom, and it says very clearly, has your property and are your property portfolio performing in 21? And when we say performing, obviously we're talking about a financial performance. We're not talking about a bricks and mortar property running the 100-meter, because it's not possible. We're talking about performing in terms of revenue. So I'm going to first ask a very different question. I'm going to ask Kiona first. We'll say, Kiona, can you tell us whether the term buy-to-let is actually used in India or Canada? Is it actually a terminology that's used there?
No, in India, definitely not. That's like India, rent is still pretty much regulated by the RERA, which is the regulation body in India for real estate. There's only one prominent body. It's not as organized, but it depends on area basis, and it's regulated by a certain, you cannot charge beyond a certain point. So in India, buy-to-let is not a concept yet as prominent, but BTL might be a thing is a thing in Canada, like a lot of, in Canada, especially with zooming prices, lack of housing, lack of rent regulation, these properties have been performing quite well, I would say, because in the past 25 years, there has been no price regulation, rent regulation in Canada. And
wow.
Yes, there has been
quite
more.
surprising, because you expect the Canadian government to have regulated buy-to-lets, or at least rental properties. So how is the rent? How do you? Let's understand first. Do you acquire properties specifically to rent out? So do you have a different type of a financial structure when you're acquiring a property in Canada because you're going to rent it out, or do you just buy a property with the same financial calculation that you would do a normal property, and you would just basically decide, I'm going to live in this one, but I'm going to rent that one out? How does it work?
I think that some of the residential, like there are in Canada, there's a lot of disparity in terms of area. So some of the places like Vancouver, Ontario, places which we are aware of, there are places like Quebec where the rent is still affordable and housing is still an affordable option. But if you're talking about financial structure, then no. Like if you're applying to buy, because you have to put down a 5% or 10% deposit depending on the valuation of the property and when you're planning to buy it. So it's more profitable to rent in places like Vancouver and Ontario, where the rents have gone up. And I was reading a report by Savills yesterday. So the rents have gone up by 337%. I'm saying 337% in the past 25 years. There has been no regulation. So definitely, like, rather than living there, it's not depreciating, but rather than living there, renting it out, you get to you make for them higher zooming in profits as compared to just living in an area. So when a Canadian is thinking of buying a house, they would rather buy a house in a place like Quebec or downtown Ontario. But if they're gonna think as a commercial point of view, they're gonna definitely think of the city, buy a property there, and then that the break even is like reached at a faster pace as compared to a residential property in the longer term.
Wow, wow. Okay, so the question wasn't completely answered, but I'm going to ask again. Do you take out separate commercial lending when you're purchasing in Canada? Do you announce that I'm going to buy this property to rent it out, or do you just buy it under the same terms, but you just change how you're going to use that property?
No, you do have separate rules for commercial and residential in particular case, like because they in Canada,
Right,
if you
so
own more
there
than
is.
2 properties, you get a taxation, a heavy taxation, and in that case, to make up for the amount of money that has been paid for the third home
Wow.
or the fourth home, you get a third home tax. Yeah. So when people who are specifically in the real estate market, because real estate is one of
Wow.
the
Okay.
yes, real estate is one of the strongest form of strongest contributor to the economy. So people who specifically buy out in terms of real estate, they do think of
So it's one of those.
Sorry.
Is it one of those things that will be regarded as an economic indicator, property
Definitely. It's one of the strong
in Canada?
parameters.
You
Yes.
call it
Yeah.
an economic indicator? Pardon? Yes. Okay.
Definitely.
Right,
Yeah.
Lakhi. Got a bit of flavor of the Canadian market there from Kiona. And by the way, sorry, we didn't actually ask where Kiona is now. We didn't ask her where she's come. Right, I know you've come from India. Tell us, where are you now, and what's the weather like wherever you're at?
I'm in the UK, so I flew in on
Hello.
the 5th of September. Hi, am I audible?
Wow. Fresh off the plane. I like that. You've only been here about
Fresh off the
5
going.
days, yes?
Fresh off the going. Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Fresh off the plane, right? And where are you now then in the United Kingdom?
I'm in a place called Uxbridge. It's in West
Uxbridge.
London. Yes.
Wow, we know Uxbridge. So that's just a stone throw away from the airport. So you've literally got off the plane and walked home. So you're in Uxbridge, and
Yeah.
and I think you're here for some. Is it studies, or are you here for workplace? What are you here for?
I am here for both, actually. So I am doing a master's in business administration in digital marketing from University of East London, and that's my prime purpose of visit, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I have taken up internship in a firm, where in a real estate firm, of course, Salim, that would interest you, and I'm learning more about the ins and outs of the UK market. So let's see how that goes. That's my purpose of visit.
Okay.
Yes.
Excelente, excelente. Right, Lakhi Singh, I'm sorry I left you out. I think I was mesmerized by Kiona's beauty, and I thought I was in a movie, Bollywood movie. Now I'm coming back to reality and I see your ugly face. I remember now. Please tell us your comments on the British market. Is it the? I mean, is it performing in 21? Are buy-to-let properties actually performing?
Depends what you mean by performing. But on the whole, the London market for rentals now, and nearly all the properties are rented in London, because the students have come back in now. I think this is probably like the first week of normalcy since the lockdown started, because a lot of the businesses are up and running. Everybody's back in town. I think yesterday evening, I think I've seen probably the most people in London that I've seen in since March 2019. So I think
Wow.
things are sort of
Wow,
normalized.
that's a big statement. Are you saying London is back online then? Are you saying that's what's happening?
Yeah, I think all the clubs, bars, restaurants, events, I think everything's happening now. I think there's pretty much some sort of event being set up every other day now. So it's all
Wow.
pre-lockdown times in terms of fluency of events and people going out, restaurants and cinema, and just the general buzz in London now. So
Okay, so what I want to ask then is, I know we asked you the question, we're going to ask it again, because sometimes I think a lot of our guests, and especially Lakhi Singh, who's, the property fixer, sometimes the question's left aside. Are properties performing though in 21, taking out the fact that the students have come back in? Are they performing? If
properties
you had a rental
performing
property,
all depends on really how people have set themselves up. But general terms, properties are performing. They're probably back to normal. The rates are the cheapest they've ever been, I think, in the history of rates. I mean, even for residential properties, you get rates low as 1% or 0.65, even something that's unheard of. So there's a lot of cheap money.
hang on, 0.65.
That's right.
Wow, when did this happen?
I think I just read it in the newspaper about a week ago.
Right.
I did an article. But there's a lot. The lending market's very competitive. There's a lot of international money coming into the markets, and there are lots of new buy-to-let products coming up as well. There's a product that allows you to rent your property out and get a buy-to-let mortgage, 75% loan to value, but there's no rental calculation. So if the rent was even quite low,
Let's say £1,000.
£1,000 and a £400,000 property. There's a lending arm that's going to start lending out up to 75%, even on low rental properties.
Yeah.
So I think they've found a bit of a niche because they've got a lot of cheap money. So they're going to be lending that out at a slightly higher rate because a lot of buy-to-let lenders are getting very competitive now, going down to very low rates. So if they use that formula, that's going to allow them to lend at about 4%. So that means that technically they're going to be in a position to be able to capture an angle in the market, which allows them to take a pick of the landlords that are going to come on their books to try and get more cash out. So one aspect of the buy-to-let market is, it's beginning to perform because there's cheaper lending. The other aspect of it is that there's a artificial boom in property prices. Property prices have gone up by about 8% or 10% from last year.
Wow.
Read that out in the last session that we had. So you can sort of
artificial boom, you say, Lakhi. What's the artificial boom about?
The prices are
why is there an artificial boom?
My guess is that the government's pumped in a lot of money into the economy via bounce backs. So there's a lot more money flow, and then people have been spruced up through furlough. So there's been spending still going on, people still going out and doing, business in property because of access to funds. So there's I'd say, artificial boom for those couple of reasons. And because there's probably been minimal building of properties and the probably slowdown in the building of properties, I would say, somewhat, there's probably more of a demand for more property. And because the stamp duty was also reduced, there was a huge amount of volume of purchasing going on pre the holiday, and the stamp duty.
Have they stopped the stamp duty?
think the stamp duty was stopped a couple of months ago, or about a month or two ago.
Right. Okay.
I can't remember exactly when, but I think it's this month or last month that it stopped. So that's what I'm saying. It's artificial increase in the stamp duty actually played a major part. So there's
Yeah.
quite a lot of factors in terms of why there's been a sort of like a change or flux in the property market. And is the property market booming? Technically, it's always booming, depending on really what your formula is to purchase. If you're buying cheap, you make money. If you've got cheap money, you make money. If you've got a good accountant and you can manage your taxation well, and to manage all the taxation laws that have come in, which are quite draconian in the last 10 years, yep, then you're making money.
Okay.
So it's not really like
let's go back across the water. Let's go back to Canada. And the reason I say that, Cleona, is not that we don't welcome you here in the United Kingdom. Obviously, we're talking about your experience. Have you sold or worked within the United Kingdom at all in the property market?
Are you talking to me? No, I haven't. I'm a starter, so I haven't. But I have been keeping up to date with the news, but I do not have any practical experience. But in a month's time, maybe I'll be in a better position to answer you that question.
Excellent. Right. Okay. So can you tell me then, from what you've heard there from Lakhi,
Yeah.
is it other terminologies? Is it similar to the way the Canadian market works? Is it a very financial structured element? Are you a better salesperson, or are you a better financial manager when it comes to properties?
I have been working in sales, but my experience is entirely in sales in terms of it. But I think that the terminologies that Lakhi use are pretty much like not maybe word to word, but they're pretty much the essence of it is pretty much the same across real estate worldwide. So I think that if we compare Canadian market to the UK market, of course, the situation is totally different in Canada as compared to UK, because even though there were stamp duties and stamp duty holidays during the lockdown that the government had introduced specifically for home buyers, there were no such incentives given in the Canadian market. Despite that, the sales were strong, and Canada has a strong immigration record. So a lot of foreign money comes in. The interest rates have been, and there has been no inflation correction, and as I have mentioned before. So despite that, and despite there has been no artificial boom that was strategized or laid out for Canada during the lockdown period, and Canada is still, like parts of Canada is still in lockdown, but the house rates have been going high. But in July, there was a 6.7% decline in new listings and sales. There was an 8.7% decline. I am stating out facts I've read from Jabingo, which is one of the prime time real estate magazines. So yes, some are speculating there's an election coming up, that there's going to be a house market crash in the Canadian market pretty soon, and they have been speculated about it.
Okay, yes. What's the foundation of the crash? Is it interest rates? Is it just going to be there's
high demand, low supply, like really high prices? Some of them, there are 81,000 applicants who want to live in the subsidized houses, and they're in a waiting list still. There has been no allocation. So some people blame it on the foreign money, because some of the investors, for like Chinese investors, the European investors, they have been buying properties in there and make really, and they have a lot of capital to spare. So the people who are actually in need of residences have been deprived of it, and there's a huge housing problem in Canada, and there's a huge demand and lower supply, and the price definitely goes up with the same economic logic. So people are speculating a crash, and political parties, this year's agenda has primarily been the housing market. Like if you go and listen to the agendas, all of them do mention housing in some of their bulletins.
Wow, the surprising thing, I used to think the United Kingdom or the UK market is quite primer in terms of it's busting at the seams. They don't have solutions, and there's always a new product out there that's being tested and tried, but there's no real real complete solution. Listening to what Koyona said there, it sounds like we're not that bad. Canada's slightly behind us. Is that right, Lakhi? Is that the feeling you get, or do you get another feeling?
I'm not sure what you're trying to say. You're saying Canada's behind? In what way?
A bit more primitive than us in the property market in terms of the tools and the regulation and the volume. It's possibly a bit. I'm going to ask Koyona first. Koyona, are properties owned by large corporates and companies mainly, or are they actually owned by lots of individuals?
There has been vast monopolization by some of the prime and dominant real estate companies and vast corporate companies who do think that, since it's rare and any commodity which is deemed as rare always gets privatized. So there are corporates which have owned properties, and they are slightly a part of the problem, but I don't think it's one of the prime reasons why properties are dwindling or the prices are really high. I don't think corporates really play that major of a role. That's my personal perspective. But yeah, some people do blame it on the corporates and the foreign money, like the foreign investments. So maybe.
Right. Okay. Yeah, Lakhi. So yeah, tell me.
I don't think it's primitive. I think what it is I think it's a very, very different market because you've got a lot more land mass, you've got a lot more space to build.
Yeah.
I think one peculiar thing which I heard when I was out there was that it's very rare for in certain areas for property prices, like flats that are built, the prices to go up, and sometimes the prices actually depreciate as well for certain flats which are built, which is peculiar maybe. And I think this is where Koyona may be able to shed some light on that, whether that's fact or that's just a myth.
I think you mentioned that they've got places like Quebec that has got cheaper housing, or the cost of buying a house is much cheaper. It's a similar concept to us in the United Kingdom, where a lot of people who are trying to get into property will buy properties in the north, so Sunderland or Newcastle or Burnley or Blackburn or Blackpool or somewhere up in the north, so that they can at least get into the property market, and then at the later stage, once that property increases in value, sells the property to come back more towards the south. It's a similar concept, isn't it, Lakhi?
Yeah, I think, but I think there are peculiarities. I suppose it's to be expected because the regulation around finance is probably quite different out there. The loan to values probably work quite differently. And my guess is that.
But no, she said 10% on residential. Is that right, Koyona? You said 5 to 10% deposit is normally required. Is that right?
In residentials, yeah. Depending on the value, there are different loan structures and slabs according to the pricing of the houses. So it's definitely on the pricing of the houses, the deposit changes the amount.
So is it a higher deposit for a cheaper property, or is it a higher deposit?
For £1 million house, you would look at say around 10%, somewhere around 10%. Maybe it's negotiable, of course. It's the listed price, not the actual sales price. But if you're looking for cheaper houses, the government is careful to regulate that part at least, where at least you can put 5% and get a roof over your head.
Wow.
But how much is it for commercial?
Commercial, it ranges. I think the lending rates there, it's getting really competitive these days. So the percentages would vary anywhere between 7.5 to 8.5.
I mean, I'm talking about
a cardboard box. Do you think we could get it?
I don't think that's the idea, but yeah, if we say it.
I'm trying to start at the bottom, you see, and work my way up. So if I was trying to mortgage a cardboard box, Would that be possible? Would I be able to get 100% mortgage on that?
I'm sure you can manage a way, Salim.
Okay.
Cardboard boxes.
Right. Okay. No, there are people. There are people who are living in cardboard boxes, and they choose to do so. And we have a person in Berkeley Square, I think. Is that right, Lakhi? The bank for the homeless. Is that right? His bank is in a cardboard box as well. Pardon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
So he lives in a hotel.
Yeah. All right. He lives in a hotel, does he?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyhow, looking at.
Can I ask a quick question, Serena, just to try and round off the topic, which is, what's the loan to values for commercial then? Are they, if residential's 5 to 10% deposit, what's the deposits for a buy-to-let property?
BTL.
How is it calculated, the amount of money that's lent?
Money that is lent. I have been dealing with residential mainly, so I can come back to you on that topic.
Lakhi Singh putting co-owner on the mat there, throwing in a very difficult question, and hopefully we should try and get co-owner on. I think it's a clever way for Lakhi to get co-owner on again, so we can get her feedback on commercial lending in Canada. Okay, do they normally mostly live in flats, apartments, or is it houses? What's the style of living in Canada, co-owner?
I think with it varies according to demography. Like people who are slightly older, they prefer family homes, but after a certain point of time, when the kids move out, they downsize into flats. But it's like that's what we were told. Like people, the young crowd, they prefer flats and studios, and that's where they live because that's far more affordable and it's compact and doesn't need a lot of maintenance, a lot of refurbishments when you're moving in. But once you have a family, you do tend to move into a bigger house, a bigger space for it. And they, again, eventually they end up downsizing. That's a concept we knew, that they end up downsizing when the.
Wow. Okay. Lakhi Singh, I'm going to ask you now, right? I mean, we've been generally sort of comparing what happens in Canada, and we're looking at Canada from our prism, the UK prism. Genuinely, in 2021, have you found that the property market or the returns on investment into property are bearing fruits, or is it still more of a problem having a property during lockdown? And let's not use the word 21, then let's take out 21. Let's say lockdown, because really the lockdown has more of a significance than does the year, because 20 was literally an entire lockdown. 21 seems to be the light at the end of the tunnel. But do you find that properties have become problematic in the 2 years that we've been in lockdown, or do you think they have been performing?
Is that question directed towards me? Sorry.
Yeah, it's to Lakhi. Lakhi's the expert in the United Kingdom.
So the properties have come. What the last bit was? What? Sorry.
Right. Okay, it's quite a long question. I'll repeat it for you, sir.
Yeah. Sorry.
We will not look at 21 or 20 because really the question isn't the year. The year is insignificant. It's actually the lockdown which has become a bit more significant. A lot of people I've come across seem to feel that they never actually touched 20. It was like a dream because of lockdown. So I'm asking you in general terms, during the lockdown, were properties more of a problem or were they more profitable?
I would say they're more of a problem because a lot of tenants weren't really paying up their rental. And the second thing is that if you were on a growth spurt to buy property, everything was like half closed because everybody's working from home. Surveyors, solicitors, builders, gas certificate people. So everything took twice as long, if not 3 times longer.
Wow.
So certain transactions, which normally take 6 to 8 weeks, took an average of about 6 to 8 months to complete because of the. I think it's a bit like the sort of thing we have with the British Rail. Sometimes when it snows or there's a few leaves, the trains usually turn up about an hour late, or they don't even start. So same sort of situation with the COVID-19. I think basically the whole process came to almost a standstill, especially during the first lockdown. Then that lockdown had an overspill for the next 2 lockdowns in terms of speed, and I think that's still not quite there yet. It's still got the overspill of the backlog, so the solicitors are completely inundated now. To try and get a solicitor to go to court for an important case now, you might have to sort of bring them about 8 weeks in advance.
Wow. Okay, Koyana. So I believe you're you say you're 5 days into United Kingdom. You've just flown in from India. How does it feel? Does it feel? Is this your first time in the United Kingdom?
No, I have actually lived in the United Kingdom for quite a bit, and this feels home. So there's it feels great to be back, honestly.
Okay, it feels great. I like that. That's a very excellent. I mean, that sounds extremely comforting to know that you look at United Kingdom as your home. And can you tell me what was it like in India during the lockdown in property? Were you dabbling in the Indian market at all?
No, the Indian market in terms of property, I think there were issues, like there were, as Lakhi mentioned rightly, there was a financial crunch everywhere. The tenants were refusing to pay up. Like I personally have, like my father, not me, has 2 properties which we go after,
I like the way you say that. You make a clear distinction between that which is yours and that which is your dad. I'd say the other way around. Everything that is my dad's is mine, and anything that's mine is mine. So it's not yours, it's your dad's. So your dad's properties. Give us an insight. So he's got rental properties, does he?
Rental properties, yes.
Yeah.
So a couple of them were hosting, like there was a huge unemployment issue in India. So these properties were given out to some corporate workers, and they couldn't manage to pay the rent. And usually you have to provide a 2 months notice in India. The notice was 2 months before you evacuate the property. And there were times when they couldn't pay the property bill and they had to evacuate. And we were not in the position, out of sheer humanity, to even ask for the bills, because we know what exactly the financial crunch was. So maintaining a property, and though it's way cheaper than it is in the UK or Canada or elsewhere in the world, it was still problematic to maintain the property, or even like just get chased with the rent in the case. So I'm sure that's not
Did you have a process in place before lockdown, or sort of something that was more sort of like debt collection, like you got someone knock on the door, Mr. Patel, can you please pay your rent? Did you have anything like that? Is there anything like that in India?
Very informal in India. The situation is really informal in India. We do not, like, even with the rent markets and the rentals, and we do not actually go to debt collectors. I think my father would go himself and burst out like, just pay the rent, yo. But at the same time, because of COVID, when the person lost job, we were not in a position to even ask it. And we were like, we understand where you come from, because we bore a bit of financial crunch ourselves. So we were like, yeah, we were not in a position to chase for the rent. But
how many weeks and months for then? How long were you being exceptionally patient?
We started off with like 2 months, and after 2 months, like there was India was in a lockdown, but at the same time, things were open and the people weren't listening. Like people weren't adhering to the rules, because it's a huge country, and it's not a very affluent country in some parts. Like majority of India, like they are still day-to-day wage earners. So you cannot stop and put a halt to a country like that. It's really tough.
Wow.
Like UK was in the lockdown for like good 8-9 months, sometimes like on and off. But at the same time, the same strategy won't work back home in India, right? So it was like 2 months, 3 months, and the property was empty for say 3 months. It was tough to get tenants because people weren't moving much, and they didn't have and these houses were in like prime locations of the city. So I come from a place called Calcutta.
Wow.
So it was on the southern side of Calcutta. So the rents are definitely higher, and you wouldn't settle for less, like because of the area value and the nice environment that you're putting it up in. So it was tough to get tenants, but eventually we did land up with some. So it was just a brief hiccup for 2 to 3 months or 4 months at max, I would say, from my personal experience.
Wow. Okay. So is there, I mean, I assume the properties were on finance, or were they cash paid? Were they all paid up?
They were paid up. They were cash paid.
Wow. So we're talking to a very rich young lady.
No,
Who's got a
no.
dad who's got 2 cash paid properties. Lakhi, I mean, you've been in property for a long time, and you've had lots of property portfolios, and you're a bit of a mover shaker of the square mile. Isn't that a luxury to have cash paid properties? Did you ever keep them fully paid up, or were you always refinancing or leveraging against the asset to buy more?
I did have some being paid up. It wasn't necessarily properties like pieces of land or abroad. So any surplus cash that I had that was sometimes used for cash flow, I might actually put it into something just to put it as like some sort of option or a cash, for cash purchase of a property where. So I did have a couple of cash paid properties at a certain point in time.
Wow.
Wasn't there for long because there was always a new project that came up which needed investment. So easier said than
Well,
done.
look, I've got a couple of cardboard boxes. That weren't paid for, but they're definitely mine, and they're all paid up, and I don't have anything. Only problem is no electrics wired up to, no gas, and don't have a front door. I just have to use the flap of the top of the box to live in. But it's a comfort, isn't it, Kayona, to know that you have something that doesn't have finance, isn't subject to the forces of the market, irrespective of the fact that you have tenants in there, they're not paying up, you sympathize with their. Did they pay the basic bills though? Did they pay electric and gas? Or were they also sort of trying to be totally frivolous with your father's property?
No, they were frivolous, I would say. Like my
They were
experience
frivolous. Wow.
they were
Wow.
no hard feelings, but at the same time, yeah, it's just like
They were
I think
frivolous,
that they were
right.
struggling financially so bad. They were just trying to cut corners wherever possible, and they didn't deem like the property, though they were living there, it was somebody else's property. It was not their own property. The care was definitely secondary and not primary.
Well, I think that just goes back to somebody's individual upbringing, because a property is a property, and it's your space while you're living in it. And surely to live in a space that's not clean, not kept up to standards, only reflects about your own standard, maybe your own ideals about living. So it's not really a matter of it being yours or not yours. I think that's a separate topic. But yes, I was just asking the question to say, right, your father has taken financial loss, but were they decent enough to pay the rent? Sorry, not the rent, the electric and the gas. And you're saying obviously not. I think you're probably very broad in your understanding, and you can see. Did you actually have an experience of managing properties in India? Were you looking after Dad's business at all anywhere, or
I would
involved
assist him
in
here and there. Yes, yes. Like, there would be times he would just be like, "You're not doing anything. Just go there and check up on the property." So there would be a gas leak, or there would be a tap leak, or they would need some sort of managing. Just get the worker there. So that kind of assistance. And in India, it's pretty handy because you get here. It's very expensive and it's very rare. Like you have to take appointments and stuff. In India, you can literally just go and show up and be like, "Here's some money. Can you please help me and get this done for me?" And because you do want to ensure that the tenants that you're putting in, they get the best service of standard, at least the basic rights, like the basic amenities should be fixed and proper. So yeah, I did assist my father. Nothing too complicated, but basically the errands I would run for him, to be
So
very
are you
honest.
actually interested in property? Is that your passion or something, or are you just landed into property because that was the first job that you liked? It seemed interesting.
No, I have been going over the British property market. I've been reading up things, and I do have a lot of friends in the property market, like who are doing work, and that does interest me for sure. But to answer your question, I'm a starter. Like I am fresh off the Boeing, yes, but at the same time, I am starting fresh in the property market as well. So yeah, I don't have much experience in the British property market, but yeah, things can
Okay,
always
but
change.
I'm sure you learn. We're in the last minute. Please tell us, Lakhi Singh, what is your real prediction about the property market? Let's leave COVID and leave lockdown. Let's suppose there is clarity. We are going to be out of lockdown. What do you say is your prediction about the property market and the profits in property for the immediate future?
Well, I think there's definitely going to be a correction in the next 6 months. So it's a perfect opportunity for anybody that's about to get into property or in property to start getting ready to ramp up when the good, more property deals come on the table. Secondly, I think it's a really fantastic time to grab some financial products out there and refinance your portfolio if you've got the credentials. So while the money is good, because the money could also tighten and get yourselves in a longer term fixed. If there's a correction, then you don't get caught off guard. So I think those two simple things for the moment.
Excellent, sir. And finally, Kayona, we should round off with your lovely opinion on what you think is going to happen in the foreseeable future as you're studying the property market. Do you think it's going to get better? Do you think it's going to be, like Lakhi said, a correction? It's a subtle way of saying a crash. Let's say it's correction. Is it going to be a crash?
I do think there's gonna be some. I don't think it's gonna be a crash of the standards of 2007, 2008, like the housing crisis. But at the same time, it has been steady. They're going by the basics of economics. Like it's a cycle, right? There's always gonna be a slump after a trough and the crest, right? So it's always gonna happen.
Yes.
Yes. So
Okay,
I do think there's
I'm
gonna
going
be
to buy a new box for myself, and I shall have an extended box to live in. So I'm going to beg leave to Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, and Kayona, lovely Kayona, for taking time out and being a guest today. It was a good experience for us to work out how good you really are and how much you've actually started to get your feet under the desk in the property market. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, and Kayona, the Drive Time Live, and we will see everyone back next week, Monday and Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Take care, sir.